It's here again. It's race week, and I am so excited for this one. Firstly, it's the double header in Jeddah, which means it's kind of double points, and I will talk about that later. And of course, it's Valentine's weekend. What could we ask for than a sport that we love? A double header, a race and a race to give us completely different standings to what we have right now. And I think there's some key points to look at. And in terms of news, there's not too much between Miami and now that has changed massively. There's no like Andretti being blue or anything like that. It is worth mentioning that that yellow paint scheme is staying for the rest of the season. That's part of their title sponsor. I do approve of it. I think it's really nice, and I think it's a better start than the red. And I know some of you have had your comments on that, and it's great. Miami was good. I think the race was good. The track was crap, and I think it's again the Gen 3 limitations. I think going into Gen 4, they're going to be able to use that. And thanks Formula E for taking us there, because I do think it's a better venue. They need to definitely do some more promotions because the stands looked a little bit quieter than we have in other E-Prix. So it's interesting to see how they can promote that and hopefully get a second E-Prix next year that can go into the calendar in America as well. Because I think it needs to be represented more, very similar to China with Sanya. But that was last week. Let's talk about this week. So we're at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. We're not unfamiliar with this. We've been racing here for a couple of years, and we've had some absolute bangers. This is the track layout, and I like to think of it as like the really small version of the one that premiered in 2021 with Formula One. Now this, of course, is our first double header, which means we do have a pit boost. And when I started watching the sport, I didn't understand pit boost very well. But actually, if you look at it on paper and how it actually is supposed to change the races, it does add a bit of value. In a Formula E race, we tend to have what we call a go point. Sometimes there's two, and it's where they really push to the end. So there's a bit of energy conservation at the beginning, and then there's this point where everyone just goes full steam ahead. Now, with the pit boosts, it kind of changes where that happens, because they have to do a mandatory 30-second stop that gives them an extra 10%. And it's our version of a proper pit stop in Formula E, because we don't change our tyres, and pit boost doesn't really give you any benefit to that. That's kind of what our attack mode does. And I'm only explaining that just in case you're new to Formula E and you really want to know what we're going into in this race weekend. But that's my understanding. I've only been watching the sport 2 and a bit years, and I think every race we have is just something new and exciting. I've said it's double points. The way I've worked it out, and I'll put a graphic on screen to kind of explain this, drivers can score up to 58 points over this weekend. They can win the race twice, they can win qualifying twice, and they can also get the fastest laps. That in total can give you 58 points. The likelihood of that, I mean, you'd have to be Pascal on a good day, but, you know, that is possible, but very unlikely in Formula E. I mean, the chances of you coming first and last is probably higher than doing the ultimate points run. For the constructors, it's a little bit different. We can score it to 43 plus the 3 points for the qualifying, and then of course you've got the extra point for fastest lap. The 43 is obviously the best points you can score in a race, which is 25 and 18. Times that 2, you can get 94 points. And I think it's really interesting to know that, because looking at the standings right now, it's very close. There's not big gaps between people. It's quite a season ready to be absolutely shaken up by Jeddah. And I think this is why I'm not going to mention Mitch Evans or Pascal Wehrlein or the last 3 winners of the races, because actually it means nothing. Now we've got this double header, the whole championship can be shaken up, and we could start to see a bit of a dominant champion coming through the ranks. And it could be any of, I guess, the top 7. To rewind it to last year, where Maximilian Gunther won the race by absolutely dive-bombing Oliver Rowland. Oliver Rowland looked comfortable to win this race, but Gunther knew if he dived at the last point and he could successfully make it, he would win the race. And he did so. And I think the Jeddah track promotes a lot of overtaking. It promotes a lot of places to make up places, try something, you know, that you wouldn't think of in the ordinary races. I mean, it has ended sometimes bad, where Da Costa was nearly completely taken out by, I think, one of the Andrettis. So, yeah, this track has a lot going for it, and I think this is why it being a double header, we're not going to get 2 races the same. It's going to be really, really exciting. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to what we're going to get. Is DS Penske going to go out and score high? As I do think their drivers are looking like they're coming into form with that DS Penske. And there's a few drivers I want to talk about from 8th to 12th. Joel Eriksson, Buemi, Barnard, and Nick de Vries and Maximilian Gunther literally are separated by 10 points. I think this is the closest battle and probably the biggest jump we're going to see in points across the weekend. I think first, it's very challenging, and then down the bottom, you've kind of got no scorers and DNFers. But this midfield battle is one I'm going to be watching for. I think it's very much Envision versus DS Penske, and I think the sort of look has gone into the other teams. But if we have a race similar to last week, where two of the big teams that should have scored a lot of points just wasn't even in the top 15, we could definitely see this middle sort of midfield shaken up and thrown into the top 7. So it's, definitely one to watch. Looking at the drivers' constructors, obviously there is going to be a bit of a change this week and it could go any way. Obviously Nick Cassidy is still leading by 40 points, Pascal with 38, Dennis following behind by 37, Roland on 34 and Muller on 33. Another pack that's quite close, and I think these constructors are very strong. Doesn't mean that Jaguar can't catch up this weekend, but these lot are going to be fighting for every single point they can to stay in the top positions of the championship. Looking at the constructors, well, that's even more interesting because Porsche lead with 71, followed by Citroën, Mahindra on 38. Then we've got Andretti on 37 and Nissan on 35. And what's even better is the fact that actually 6th and 7th are probably in a stone's throw distance from 2nd as well, because we've got Envision on 31 and then we've got Jag on 30. And actually, come to think of it, if DS Penske score like they do, they're on 20 points. They could really turn it around with those 94 points that they could have up for grabs. And this is why I think this one is really going to show the first 3 results were just kind of just bedding the season in a little bit. Some shocks, some surprises. But to see where this could take us this weekend is going to be very exciting. And I don't think we're going to have anyone in the same position by the end of the weekend. I think it's physically impossible. So hopefully Dan Ticktum, this is your 4th and 5th race to try and finally score some points. I'm hoping something goes in his favour because I feel like he is having probably the worst start to the season. So, and that's kind of it. Just to really look at the results, kind of catch you up with what to look out for. Definitely that midfield pack. They're the ones to keep your eyes open for. I think if you were going to put some bets on, that's where you would go. It's probably going to be the most exciting part of the weekend. If an Envision or a DS Penske slaps it on pole position, it's going to shake up the whole championship in that midfield. One final thing to mention, I did a whole video on this, so go check that out if you're interested. But there is the Evo sessions happening on the Monday. This will be live streamed on YouTube. Some of your favourite content creators from the UK are taking part. And again, it's to promote the sport. I was a bit questionable at first with why are they choosing the people they have, but if you watch my video, you'll actually see the light bulb flicked, and I was like, well done, Formula E. But anyways, my name is Kyle. This has been sort of a race week update. We have a podcast prediction show on YouTube. There is also a podcast version where me and Corey talk about who we think we want to do well this weekend. That comes out on Wednesday, and I guess if you don't watch that, we'll see you on Unscripted on, I think it's going to be the Monday release now with a double header. I'm a bit scared because it's a long weekend for content creation, and it's going to be a good one. So thanks very much for tuning in. My name is Kyle, and this is The Current Lab.